What are tiger parents? Tiger parents is a term used in East Asian culture to describe a form of strict authoritative parenting where the parents usually become a little too invested in their children's success. Tiger parents will push their children to attain high levels of academic success and or extracurricular activities such as music and sports. It's the equivalent of the American term stage mom. So what happens when an adult child at the age of 24 has had enough of their tiger parents and takes matters into her own hands to finally obtain her freedom? This is the story of Jennifer Pan. Hey everyone, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of DannieBSpeaks Presents, Not Another True Crime Podcast. I am your host, Tahir Ali, and in this episode, we are going to discuss the case of Jennifer Pan and tiger parenting. Now, I had never heard of the term tiger parenting until I first heard about this case just a couple years ago when I was just into my little true crime blackouts. You know how I do. I have my own thoughts on the topic, but of course we will discuss that and save that for the end. So let's go ahead and get on with the show. Okay, so before I move on with the show, let me put this disclaimer out here real quick. So as I mentioned in an older podcast, I'm not going to give this disclaimer every single show because it's not necessary, and I will explain why. So it seems as someone came into my comments on YouTube saying that I was reading directly from an article without citing it. And of course, they deleted their comment before I could respond because I was going to let them have it. But anyway, so here we go. First of all, it's called fair use. That is why I put the fair use disclaimer in the show notes because, of course, I am getting my information from articles that I find on the internet. I also reach out to people who may have knowledge of these cases. If they get back to me, sweet. If they don't, that's fine. So of course, I'm reading from a script, but it's a script that I wrote myself. And it's from the research that I have done on the case that I am talking about. I don't know these people. I wasn't there. So of course, I would get my information from online sources, and there is no need to cite them when I am claiming fair use. If there is something that I haven't confirmed or just doesn't sound that right to me, but I see it, I put allegedly or a source has said, something on that order. That's what people do. Now, I love constructive criticism and open dialogue. That's why I do this. I like to have these type of discussions and things like that. I love the feedback. Perfectly fine. But when you are trying to call someone out about something that you don't know about, I'm going to get you. That's just what it is. That's just how it goes, And I was looking for them too. Let me tell you, but I could not find their profile anywhere. But anyway, I will take your comment as a compliment though, because, obviously it appears that my own script that I wrote from my own research, it sounds good enough that it came from a reliable source, quote unquote, reliable source that needs to be cited, so I'm perfectly fine with that. Baby, this is not a term paper. I'm not going to cite every single source that I use. I'm not going to do it. Again, it's called fair use. So anyway, enough of that. Let's get on with the show. So Jennifer Pan is a Vietnamese-Canadian woman who was born June 17, 1986 in Markham, Ontario, Canada, to Han Pan and Bic Pan, who immigrated from Vietnam to Canada in 1979. The Pans immediately started working at an auto parts manufacturer. They continued to work hard, moving up the ranks. They just wanted to be able to provide the life and opportunities for their children that they never had. Their children were, of course, Jennifer and Felix, who was born 3 years later in 1989. That hard work paid off and they were able to purchase a large home as well as luxury cars. They were also able to build a savings of $200,000. Now, from the outside looking in, it appeared that they were the perfect immigrant family living the dream. From the beginning, Han and Bic set high standards for their children, but it seemed like they had a little bit more higher hopes for their daughter Jennifer and that she was going to be kept under lock and key. She was enrolled enrolled in piano lessons at the age of 4 and started figure skating in elementary school with an extremely high hopes and demands from her parents, mainly her father, to become an Olympic figure skater. Now, unfortunately, Jennifer tore a ligament in her knee around the 8th grade, and her future career as a professional figure skater was over. Now, even though she was thriving academically and socially, behind the scenes, there was a lot going on. She was suffering in silence from the high demands of her parents for her to become successful in whatever they chose for her to do with the rest of her life. It got so bad that Jennifer began cutting herself and dealing with undiagnosed depression. Her father, Han, had already picked out her career and told her that she was going to be a doctor. Jennifer had absolutely no say-so in the decision about her life, and she knew not to go against what her parents, mainly her father, have told her. When she was in the 11th grade, Jennifer did find happiness in the form of Daniel Wong, a classmate of hers who was a year older than she was. Jennifer immediately fell for Daniel while at a band concert. Jennifer started having a panic attack out of the blue, and Daniel came to her rescue. Besides her close friends, he was the only person that showed any genuine concern and attention towards her. She felt that day that Daniel saved her life and that she owed him. And not long after that, the two actually started dating. Daniel was kicked out of their school when the police found weed in his car. Still, Jennifer wasn't worried because she was in love and wasn't going to let anything come between them. Now, around this time, Jennifer's grades began to drop from A's to B's. She had been a straight A student this entire time. Yet still, because of her excellent academic career, she was still accepted into Ryerson University early, but the school ended up withdrawing their acceptance after she failed calculus her senior year. Not only was she not going to Ryerson right away, she also wasn't able to graduate. So, desperate times called for desperate measures. Jennifer forged her report cards, lied about graduating, and told her parents that she was attending Ryerson in the fall on a $3,000 scholarship. She bought textbooks, copied notes from the internet to make it look like she was attending classes, all while hanging out all day either at coffee shops while she was working, I'm sure playing out her stunts and everything like that she had going on, or just hanging out at Daniel's dorm room. A couple of years later, she told her parents that she transferred to the University of Toronto flawlessly. But this time she added a job at a hospital and had asked her father if she could change her major because pre-med was just too hard. She never took a class, so how would she know? But I digress. Sis was acting, let's just say that. It is what it is. Surprisingly, her father was okay with it and then proceeded to choose for her to take up pharmaceutical studies to eventually become a pharmacist. That was sufficient enough for him. Still, as an adult, she wasn't even able to choose her own major and career path, even though no career was coming out of it anyway, but okay. Now, she continued her performance into a quote-unquote job working at a hospital in their pharmacy. After a while, she ended up asking her parents if she could stay with one of her friends who lived closer to the school on the days when she had class. As another surprise, her parents actually agreed to this. But some things just started not adding up to her parents. She never produced her high school diploma, and she never showed any transfer papers from Ryerson University to the University of Toronto. They became even more suspicious after calling Jennifer's friend, who she was staying with, to check on her, and the friend forgot what day it was and spilled the beans that Jennifer wasn't there and hadn't stayed there that night. Her parents were confused because if she wasn't there, then where was she? Well, from the beginning of this little scheme, Jennifer never had any intention of staying with her friend in the first place. She was just a decoy because she was staying with Daniel on those nights. Her parents found out and gave her 20-something-year-old ass an ultimatum. They told her it's either us or him. So when she picked them, her parents, her family, they forbid her from seeing Daniel ever again. They made her move back home, took her cell phone and laptop, as well as tightened the handcuffs as if they couldn't become even more tighter than they already were. Girlfriend had a curfew and could only go to school, quote, quote, in quotes, and work, in quotes. They even started questioning her quote unquote job because she never had a uniform or an ID badge. So one day, they decided that they were going to drive her to work, walk in, and make sure that she was actually working. So they get in the car, drive to the hospital that she allegedly works. As soon as they pull up, Jennifer hops out the car and hit it. Her mother went in after her, but Jennifer was power walking, ducking and dodging, even hiding until the coast was clear and her mom gave up trying to find her and she just left. Now, with all this drama, Daniel had finally had enough because, of course, even though they were forbidden from seeing each other, they were still seeing each other. They were still talking, but he had enough and he officially broke up with Jennifer. So, of course, she was devastated, and if she wasn't already on the edge, then this really did it right here. Also around the corner was her quote-unquote graduation from the University of Toronto. And of course, she was graduating. But her family couldn't attend because the university was only providing each family with one ticket, and she is just so thoughtful that she gave her only ticket to a friend so that both of her parents could go. I mean, girlfriend had it all planned out, okay? But now don't get it twisted. Daniel may have had enough with Jennifer, but Jennifer was not through with Daniel. She would show up at his house unannounced, and when he started dating someone else, it really went down. Now, Daniel's new girlfriend would start getting harassing phone calls, and I wonder who those were from. And then another stunt was when Jennifer called Daniel and told him that she was attacked and never directly said it, but strongly hinted that his girlfriend had set her up. Now, for some reason, Daniel was still communicating with Jennifer too. It wasn't just her reaching out to him, he was reaching out to her. But how? Didn't her parents take her cell phone away and monitor her every move, even though she was an alleged college graduate with a budding career down to the pharmacy? Well, one night she went out dancing. I guess she was allowed to go out one night because her parents did kind of start gaining trust back in her, but she still had a curfew. But anyway, so one night she went out dancing, got drunk, met up with Daniel, and they rekindled their romance right there. I guess, Now, one way or the other, Jennifer was going to get her man back, and obviously she did. But how were they going to stay together? She was still forbidden with her grown ass to see Daniel. So Jennifer had a plan on how they could be together and get some money out of it too. Daniel gave Jennifer a spare cell phone, and with this phone, they also started planning a staged robbery. But not just any robbery. This robbery would involve the murder of her own parents. So apparently, after all of these years, Jennifer had had enough of her overly strict parents running every aspect of her life. Even now, at 24 years old, they were still basically controlling her every move. So Daniel had a friend he felt would be down for the job. Linford Crawford was a known criminal, and when approached by Jennifer to kill her parents in a botched robbery, she said that she would pay him $10,000 when she received her inheritance. Crawford was down for it. He was ready. He went out and scoped out the neighborhood and the Penn's house. He even recruited two of his friends, David Movganam and Eric Carty. They were recruited to help him carry out this horrific crime. Now, the idiots all left a trail of text messages with their plans and everything. Even the text on November 8th, the day that it was going down, when Crawford texted Jennifer telling her and confirming that after work will be game time. So on the night of November 8th, 2010, her father, Han, was in bed reading, and her mother, Bick, was downstairs reading after coming home from a line dancing class. Jennifer told her mother goodnight, knowing what was about to go down, and before heading upstairs, she unlocked the front door and turned on the lights upstairs. So a little after 10 p.m., the three men entered the home, and Jennifer and Han came running down the stairs where the men were holding Bick. The intruders tied Jennifer's hands behind her back and to the banister with a shoelace. They then dragged her parents to the basement and covered their heads with a blanket. They were asking where the money was, and during the confusion, Bick was shot 3 times in the head, and Han was shot in the face and in the shoulder. Immediately following the gunshots, the intruders fled the house, and Jennifer called 911. And while on the call, pretending to be hysterical, and in the background, you could hear the father who had survived. He ran up from the basement. He ran outside, down the street, screaming. Of course, he was in obvious pain and fear. clear. When the paramedics and police arrived, Bick was pronounced dead at the scene, and Hahn was rushed to the hospital, placed in a coma. Jennifer was taken down to the police station for questioning, and during her first interview with police, Jennifer put on her show, and of course the police at the time sympathized with her. However, after really reevaluating everything and looking more into the scene and thinking about what Jennifer said, they did have a couple suspicions. Especially the main one was, how was she able to call 911 with her hands tied behind her back? So a couple days later, they interviewed her again, and they asked her to demonstrate, and even though she was able to reach back there, they couldn't see how she could open, dial, and speak loud enough for the call to be as clear as it was while in her pocket. So miraculously, 4 days after being critically shot, Jennifer's father, Hahn, woke up from his coma, and he remembered everything, every single detail, especially how Jennifer was talking to the gunmen like they were old friends. She never showed any fear that night at all. After gathering more information and investigating further, on November 22nd, 2010, the police brought Jennifer back in for questioning. The detective confronted her with what else they had discovered, as well as what her father had told them about that night. So after a 10-hour interrogation, Jennifer finally broke down and confessed. Now, she admitted that she hired the hitmen, but they weren't to kill her parents. They were supposed to kill her. Now, of course, the detectives did not believe that at all. They weren't falling for that. Now, during this investigation and interrogation, the detectives were accused of doing some questionable tactics, but in Canada, they are allowed to lie to the suspect if they are trying to get a confession. I mean, that happens here too in the United States, but I digress. However, in this case, it didn't matter. They had enough proof and evidence, so she was going down. Jennifer provided the names of the hitmen she hired, and once they were caught, they told everything, as well as implicating Daniel Wong. He was one of the original ones with Jennifer that helped set this up, so of course they were going to tell that, and he went down as well. On December 13th, 2014, 4 years after the murder, and after a 10-month trial, Jennifer, Daniel, Linford, and David were all convicted and sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. Eric Carty, or Carty, I don't know, we'll just say Eric Carty, who was originally tried with the rest of them, had a mistrial after his attorney fell ill during the trial. Now, during his retrial, Eric ended up pleading guilty to conspiring to commit murder and was sentenced a year after the rest of them to 18 years in prison with the eligibility of parole after 9 years. He says that he took the plea deal because he didn't want to subject Mr. Pan to another trial. Ain't that thoughtful? So where is everybody today? Now, Jennifer Pan is serving her sentence at the Grand Valley Institution for Women in Ontario. Her father and brother requested a court order that bans her from contacting any member of her surviving family. Daniel is at Collins Bay Institution in Ontario. Linford is at the Kent Institution in British Columbia. David is at the Atlantic Institution in New Brunswick. Eric was at the Millhaven Assessment Unit in Ontario. However, while waiting to be moved to federal prison per his request, he was found dead in his cell on April 26, 2018. I wasn't able to find what he died from, but yeah, he was found dead. Han Pan is permanently disabled, and he was never able to work again after this. He has tried to sell the house, but no one will buy it. He is in constant pain and suffers from anxiety attacks and nightmares. He wants no contact with his daughter ever again. Her brother Felix is an engineer and is living on the East Coast away from where they grew up. He also suffers from depression and has become closed off from the outside. He also wants nothing to do with his sister again. Now, many people have asked, were the parents as strict and overbearing on her brother Felix as they were on Jennifer? Felix has admitted that he believed all of his big sister's lies and that he had no reason not to believe her. He admitted in court that he loved and respected his sister. Now, Felix was sent to private school and was pressured as well. The same way, but he was pressured to focus solely on academics, while Jennifer was able to attend public school and she was able to take up piano and figure skating. Even if it wasn't by choice, she was still able to have some other activities. Now, Felix acknowledges that their father was very controlling and their mom was softer. He said that they could talk to their mom about anything, but she mainly did go along with their dad and what he wanted, but she still protected her children, or at least she did the best that she could. Okay, so let's get into it now. Okay. And this part is not me condoning in any way, shape, or form what Jennifer did. Never. Now, of course, she knew what she was doing. Okay, that was obvious. She could have left her family's stronghold at any time if it was that serious. She was 24 years old at this time. But instead, she chose to lie and deceive her way through it all. But we had to think about it. What caused Jennifer to go to those extremes? And I'm not even talking about the murder, just everything else she did that actually led up to the murder setup. I don't even know what to call the type of lying that she did. Now, could all this have been avoided if her parents were just parents and didn't control every aspect of her life? Now, it wasn't that they tried to control it, they did. But did she allow it? Was she brainwashed? I do feel bad for Jennifer in a sense, but then if you can pull all of those stunts and shows, like plan a murder and forge all this stuff, never attended a college class, but you got it all down, girl. If you can do all of that, you can make it on your own. But obviously she didn't think that she could. But I'm pretty sure that she could have, but she didn't have the confidence to, apparently. So let me just say this. Don't be tiger parents. Don't be stage moms and dads. It's okay to support your children and want the best for your children. Love your children. Guide them. But don't dictate and control them. As we see most of the time, that will backfire. Children aren't born to become trophies, little mini-yous property. Let them be who they are. Let them find their own path regardless if you like it or not. Support them if and when they fail, because we all do. We all will at times in life. And I'm glad that I had some amazing parents. I'm so fortunate that I was raised by parents and grandparents that let me be who I am. They let me etch out my own path. They gave me suggestions and thoughts that they had and stuff like that, but they let me do it. I had to learn. They let me fail and pick myself up. But if I needed them, they were right there. And I was very fortunate, and I don't take that for granted at all. Now, nothing is perfect. No one is perfect. And children shouldn't be made to feel that they have to be. And you don't have to be a parent to know what decent parenting is. So I don't want to hear that. Now, this case is a tragic mess, but it didn't have to end that way. When we look at Jennifer, she obviously had more issues, even though she was already effed up, and even though she already effed up her life and her family's life. I do hope that she is seeking the help that she so desperately needs while she is in prison. Now, I know Canada is different, and I'm not sure how their parole system works, what the conditions are to the United States, or I should say versus the United States. If she will ever get out of prison, I don't know. But if she does, she's going to be on her own, unless she meets somebody in prison, pen pal, something like that. But that's a whole different subject. But anyway, so that is the case of Jennifer Pan and Tiger Parenting. So thank you all for tuning in to DannieBSpeaks Presents Not Another True Crime Podcast. I hope that you all enjoyed the show. And don't forget to check out my other podcast, DannieBSpeaks, the podcast. You can listen to both shows on my website, DannieBSpeaks.com, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, Audible, and my YouTube page, DannieBSpeaks, where I have uploaded all of my old podcasts on there as well. And on my YouTube page, after you subscribe, of course, let's get those subscriptions up. But you can also enjoy nostalgic videos that I may come across or that I create myself. And music mashups and other original content will be coming soon to my YouTube channel. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at DannieBSpeaks. Also, follow me on Apple Music, where I share most of my playlists that I make on there and on Tidal. I am under, of course, DannieBSpeaks. Now, if you need to reach out to me for any business inquiries, such as promoting your business, products, etc., and I will promote those on my podcast, website, social media platforms, or all of the above. And if you want to discuss collaborating with me or sponsoring me, you can hit me up at DannieBSpeaks@gmail.com. And speaking of collaborations, I have another podcast currently in the works, and I know that you all are going to love it. So be on the lookout for that. I am still working on my merch line. I am designing everything myself, and I am in no way a designer or an artist, nothing like that. The merch will just fit my aesthetic, my brand. That's pretty much it. But I'm really excited about it. This is something that I've been working on for years, and I will definitely be releasing it this year. No release date yet, but I will definitely be releasing it this year in 2022. Short stories are coming to the website. I got a lot going on, trust me. Things are coming, things are building. And, as I mention all the time, my mind runs 1,000 miles per hour, and it really is hard for me to focus on one thing, but I am truly, truly, truly working on it. I bought a separate planner so that I can have one for my personal, my 9-to-5 job, one for that, and then one for my business, or I should say my LLC, because yes, she is a limited liability company. So that is DannieBSpeaks LLC, but I need to stay more organized, and I'm old school, so I like to write stuff down rather than put everything in my phone, but I'm getting it together. So as always, I appreciate you all. Be sure to continue to support or start supporting the DannieBSpeaks brand. It would be so greatly appreciated. A follow, a share, a subscription, word of mouth, it can all go a long way. It really can. So until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Be safe out there, mask up, drink water, take your vitamins, all of that good stuff. And I will catch you all on the next one. Take care, you all. Peace.